Well, I thought about it, and 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 I decided we're going to have to talk about it. And we weren't really going to be, we'll probably will talk about it tonight on the post-game show, and maybe even on the morning pit tomorrow. But that seems like a long time to wait to talk about some pretty significant news for the Pitt basketball program. You've seen it already. John Hugley with the announcement today that he's transferring out of Pitt. He's entering the transfer portal and leaving Pitt after basically 2.5 seasons with the Panthers. And the announcement came out a couple hours ago. We're recording this in the 1 o'clock hour here. I think it came out in the 11 o'clock hour. So there's been a little bit of time to process the information, a little bit of time to process the news, and think about what we ultimately make of this situation. And I don't think this will be too long of a video, but I figure we should talk about it real quickly. And as I keep thinking about it over the last couple hours, first of all, I can't say it's a complete shock. I thought I believed there was still a chance Hugley could come back. There were certain things that happened along the way that were a little curious, that made me wonder if that was going to happen or not, but I thought it was still very much a possibility, and I entertained the conversations about what this Pitt basketball team could look like next year with Hugley and Federico playing together. And so I thought about it, and thought it might happen, thought it might not, but there were some things along the way, little bits and pieces here and there, that made you say, that's curious. So, there was a tweet about a week ago from Hugley's high school coach, Chet Mason, video of Hugley working out in the gym. I think wearing Pitt stuff, making threes, moving well, looking like he's in shape, looking like he's practicing getting better. It was a nice tweet, very encouraging for Pitt fans, you would think. But in the tweet, I forgot whatever it said. He's working hard, going to come back. Minor setback for a major comeback. One of these things. You've seen them all. And tweeted in it were John Rothstein and Jeff Goodman, national college basketball reporters, were tagged in this tweet. I thought that's interesting. Pitt basketball wasn't tagged in that tweet. Nothing really related to Pitt basketball was mentioned or tagged in the tweet, and even there was a message sent in our Panther-Lair.com basketball group chat, group text, and the message saying, "Is that an audition tape?" Because it certainly seems to be presented as such. But even before that, what really stood out to me before that, something that really raised my eyebrows, and I think I probably mentioned it maybe during one of the live shows or something like that, the Syracuse game, senior night. Honoring some pretty significant seniors, some guys who have had a lot to do with the success of the program this year, some guys who have been part of the program for a few years, guys that John Hugley has shared a locker room with for quite some time. Jamarius Burton has been here a few years. Nike Sabandi has been here a few years. Greg Elliott and Nellie Cummings just arrived this year, but certainly spent the offseason working with John Hugley and getting to know him, presumably becoming friends. And it's senior night, the night when you're honoring those players and sort of celebrating their careers and, wishing them well. It's just a time to show appreciation for, the players. And certainly if you're a teammate, it's a time to show appreciation for your teammates, your friends, your family, your brothers, all these things they always say, right? And Johnny Hugley wasn't there. And I don't presume to judge or make assumptions or pass any judgments about why he wasn't there. But I just thought that was curious. That really stood out to me. You don't even show up for senior night. Now, he hadn't been on the bench since mid-January, I think. Early January is when he announced that he was going to take some time off to address his injuries and his mental health. Or injury, singular, I shouldn't say injuries. But to address his injury and his mental health is what he said. So he hadn't been around in a little while. But I thought for that day, for that game, on that night, when they're honoring those players, I thought he might show up. Even if he was in Cleveland, I thought he would come out to Pittsburgh for that. And he didn't. And that just struck me as odd. It wasn't what I expected. I was specifically looking for John Hugley to see if he was there. And he wasn't. And I thought, this guy is further away from the team than maybe we've been led to believe. And I not only did that speak to, potentially what his future might bring, I thought it spoke to maybe his connection and relationships with the team. Because, like I said, he's been on the team with Jamarius Burton and Nike Sabandi and Aiden Fish for quite some time. Years, plural. Right? And while he's only been on the team with Nelly Cummings and Greg Elliott for less than a year, it's probably not unimportant to mention and recognize and consider the fact that Hugley was instrumental in putting this team together. This is one of the great stories of the offseason, was John Hugley spent the spring and summer finding transfer candidates and said he would text the coaches all the time. Coach, what about this guy? Should we get this guy? Should we get this guy? Should we get that guy? You can go back and watch some of the offseason. I had a few different interviews that I did, and you can go back and look at the interview with Nelly Cummings, the interview with Blake Hinson, the interview with Greg Elliott, and I think each one of those guys, I asked them, and they talked about how John Hugley was instrumental in recruiting them to get to Pitt. He helped put this team together, and then he was gone. And he has injury to deal with, mental health. I don't question that. Okay, and I don't presume. I don't want to make it sound like I'm insensitive to that situation. Certainly, he needs to do what's best for him, and I think he chose to do what's best for him. But I do wonder about when he chose to do what was best for him. This decision coming today, this announcement coming today, I should say. I don't know that if John Hugley woke up this morning and thought I'm going to transfer, if this is a decision he made yesterday or 2 weeks ago, or who knows how, I have no idea when he made this decision, but to announce it today, on the day the team is playing in the NCAA tournament for the first time in 7 years, less than 12 hours before the game. Now, timing is whatever. The decision is the important part, right? It doesn't matter what time they announce it. But today seems like not the right time to do it. And yes, transfer spots are filling up. Guys are already committing. I think he could have waited till Wednesday. And I don't want to pass judgment on a decision he made. I don't want to pass judgment on his decision of when to announce that decision. But doing it today has now created a situation where Jeff Capel at the postgame press conference after Pitt potentially wins its first NCAA tournament game in 8 years, 9 years. When Pitt is back in the NCAA tournament for the first time in 7 years, Jeff Capel is going to have questions after the game about John Hugley. And then even more than that, this is an NCAA tournament game. And NCAA tournament games, by the rule of the NCAA, coaches don't have a say in this, NCAA tournament games have open locker rooms. So, let's say Pitt beats Mississippi State tonight. Let's say Pitt wins and they advance and they make the field of 64 and they're going into the 11-6 game against Iowa State. And they've not only made the NCAA tournament, but they've now advanced in the NCAA tournament. They've won their playing game and they are playing in the first round. A momentous occasion. A situation where the players in the locker room should be celebrating, should be having fun, should be talking, taking questions about what it means to be moving forward in the NCAA tournament. And half the questions in the locker room tonight are going, win or lose, are going to be about John Hugley. Because the decision was announced today. If it's announced tomorrow, that doesn't happen. There'll be an open locker room later in the week. Let's say they win tonight. There's an open locker room later in the week. I think probably the day before the game. They have an open practice and an open locker room, and the questions would be asked then. But tonight, maybe after a win, when the focus should be on the game, on the success, on moving forward, on what that means for each of these individual players and for the team, they're going to be asked about John Hugley. Now, do I think it's John Hugley's responsibility to think of that situation when he's deciding when to announce his transfer? I don't. It's not his responsibility. He's left the team. The interests of Pitt and the players on that team are no longer of his regard. It doesn't matter to him anymore. And he's not beholden to it. But it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it played out this way, and it just feels wrong. And that's without even getting into Hugley's history with Pitt, and obviously the situation he ran into as a freshman, and Pitt standing by him, and ultimately getting him back on the court. It's disappointing to see it end like this. Not just the transfer, but the way the transfer went down. John Hugley's last game at Pitt, the final game, he plays in a Pitt basketball uniform. Bring the date up. December 10th, 2022, a 91-66 Pitt win over Sacred Heart. In his final game at Pitt, John Hugley came off the bench, played 10 minutes, scored 2 points, and grabbed 5 rebounds. While Federico started the game, played 27 minutes, and had a double-double with 17 and 14, including 10 offensive boards. John Hugley didn't suit up for another game after that. John Hugley didn't work off the bench for another game after that. He didn't appear in another game after that. And less than a month later, he was gone from the team altogether. It's unfortunate how it all went. And you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your mental health. And that's what John Hugley said, and I absolutely respect that. If he was in condition to do so, physically and mentally, if he was in condition to do so, I think Pitt could have used him quite a bit over that 2 months of basketball that he has not played with this team. When they went to Miami and gave up 25 second chance points, I'm pretty sure he could have gotten a defensive rebound or two in there. And when they played tonight against Mississippi State with Federico questionable with a knee injury, as he's about to face, a Mississippi State team that lacks some offensive firepower, but their best weapon is a big man inside, Tolu Smith. I think they could use a guy like John Hugley if he's in the right shape physically and mentally. But it said they don't have him. And they haven't had him. They haven't had him since December 10th. And quite frankly, when it's a 10-minute game with 2 points and 5 rebounds, I'm not sure they even had him that day. But it's disappointing the way all this went down. It really is. And it doesn't feel right as a way to end this. With the 2-month departure, leading into a transfer that's announced the day of the program's first NCAA tournament game in 7 years. And again, is it John Hugley's responsibility to be mindful of that? No. John Hugley's responsibility is only to John Hugley. But it's unfortunate. It really is. I was looking forward to seeing him back with the team next year. I think he could have helped next year. Yes, they do return Federico next year, and he's probably going to be much better next year than he was this year. And he was pretty impressive this season, particularly given what the expectations were. But having Hugley also on the team, banging with Federico in practice, I think it would be to Pitt's betterment to have John Hugley, the basketball player, on the court this season and next season. But that's not the way it went. That's not the way it went. That's not the way it worked out. And so they'll move on. I'm sure we'll take questions about this and talk about this on the post-game show tonight. Remember, we will be live after the Pitt Mississippi State game this evening right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And of course, we'll have a morning Pitt tomorrow morning where we'll probably touch on this a little bit as well, depending on how this Mississippi State game goes tonight. But I figured news like this, we should probably talk about it. And so we did. So thanks for checking it out. Appreciate it. Hope you have a good rest of the day, and we will talk to you tonight after the game right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.